Hi, this is Keith Silverstein. I voice Hunk in the Resident Evil game series, and you're listening to Residents of Evil Podcast. This is war. Survival is your responsibility.
Hey, welcome everybody to the show. Our guest today is Keith Silverstein. He plays Hunk in, 5 Resident Evil games now? 4? He's been doing it since 2007 back in Umbrella Chronicles. Hey Keith, how's it going?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
For anybody who doesn't know you outside of Hunk, which I imagine there's a lot of people that do, you have a very long, awesome career. Can you kind of give some background about yourself, introduce yourself to the fan base?
I will do the best I can. I'm actually not a huge fan of talking about myself, but I will do what I can.
Okay.
If you're an Overwatch fan, you may know me as Torbjorn from Overwatch. If you like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, I am Speedwagon in that. Kimimaro from Naruto. I'm Vector the Crocodile from the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise. I'm Reaper, not in Overwatch, but in Call of Duty Black Ops. And what else? Recently, Dr. Wily in Mega Man 11, if you're a Mega Man person.
Right.
And
Nice.
if you're a Miracular and you watch Miraculous Tales of Ladybug and Cat Noir, I am Hawk Moth.
Yes.
That's awesome. You have so many awesome roles. I mean, you're like a legend in the industry.
Well, that's crazy for me to hear, but thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate it.
And like I said, you've been voicing Hunk since Umbrella Chronicles in 2007. How did you get that part? How did you wind up in this?
Well, I went for an audition. I think it was Cup of Tea Productions that did that. I think, if I'm right. But I went in for an audition and I read for 2 characters. One was a scientist, and the other one was this elite military guy.
Mm-hmm.
And they called me in within, I don't know, maybe 2-3 weeks to record for the scientist. And so I did. And I went in, and that was on Umbrella Chronicles. And it was a good session. It was great. I had a good time. But I remember leaving and thinking to myself, like, oh, man, that was awesome. I really was hoping to get the badass military guy. Like I was. I was like, I'm happy to come in and do the scientist, folks, for sure. So I kept that to myself. And about a week later, I got a call, and they wanted to bring me in for another character. So I went in, and if you're familiar with Mary Elizabeth McGlynn was the director on it, if I remember correctly.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm pretty sure. I'm not saying the wrong person, but that's who I think it was. It's a long time ago, folks. A lot of water under the bridge.
Right.
And so it was this character, and his name was Hunk, and he was just this mysterious man of not so many words, just what needs to be said. Very professional, get the job done type of badass mercenary guy. So that was my first time, and I didn't know that. I at that point I didn't know that he was any kind of a cult classic. I'm not sure. Maybe he wasn't at that point. I don't know. But it wasn't until I worked on him in another game where I realized, oh, okay, this guy's coming back, and I realized after this game came out that he had some kind of a following, and thankfully they've stuck with me through the years. It's been a good chunk of games. I don't even know if I remember them all. It was like, wasn't there one like Revelations? There was Raccoon City. There was like Mercenaries 3D or something like that.
Yep. Mercenaries 3D. Yep.
I know there was more. Well, obviously the remake now. And then there was also, a lot of people don't know, but if you solve Lost Planet 2, you can play as Hunk.
Oh wow.
So he's also in that.
I did not know that.
Oh, yeah. I remember like Wesker and Frank West were 2 characters. Like you get like a character or a skin of them, but I didn't know about Hunk being in that. Holy crap!
Hunk's in it.
That's
well.
Awesome.
I mean, I haven't played it. I recorded for it.
Yeah.
So maybe they scrapped it all. I don't know, but my understanding was that Hunk was in it. Yeah.
Yeah. What's interesting is Hunk was when he was introduced back in the original Resident Evil 2 back in '98. He was this very small side character that you had to unlock, and it was just the quick little challenge mode where you had to get through the city and not take damage with limited resources. It was a time trial thing. So it was very small, but it was interesting how he just blew up as his fan favorite character. And they keep bringing him back for either remakes of the Raccoon City storyline or a bunch of small, mini games like Mercenaries and stuff. And
yeah.
What do you think is it that people love so much about that character?
Well, for me, it really can't. There's one main thing, but I'll give it two. One, there's a good design to the character.
Right.
He has a great look, and you see him, and you're like, oh my god, who is that? And then they follow that up with, we're not going to tell you who that is, and the mystery, and I think allowing fans to kind of, I mean, we know a little bit about him, but not much. So allowing the fans to kind of come up with their own idea of what his background is and where he came from and who he is and why we never see him without all his gear on and his mask, I think is huge. It's kind of that Boba Fett syndrome. You don't see too much of him, but in the beginning, he's badass, and then everybody just falls in love with his character. So
yeah, he is true. I mean, that's a good comparison. He is like Boba Fett, because Boba Fett was a very small character in the series that had this big impact and became a huge fan favorite, to where he's always still talked about. It's just like Hunk is. And when you talk about Resident Evil fans know who Hunk is. He's the mysterious umbrella operative.
Yeah, Hunk has always been he's like more mysterious than like Wesker in the series, and Wesker's like the main bad guy who still has a lot of mystery that wasn't solved. But Hunk is just like just spouts a couple of quick one-liners or deep words and just goes through and kicks all ass, and he's the only guy left standing. And the only time that they ever gave a background to him was in Code Veronica, the island that one of the characters she gets trapped on. You find out that that's the island that Hunk trained on, but that's pretty much as far back as his thing goes.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't even know that.
Everybody's like, yeah, and then the canon version or not canon, whether it's true or not, he trained the guys that he ran into. Well, he trained one of the guys that he ran into in Operation Raccoon City. So,
okay.
Yeah, they always said that Vector was like a student. And Vector almost actually beat Hunk in a fight, but Hunk beat him. But that's the thing. It's like there's so much mystery to him, and they made it so good. I mean, he never had his own game or anything like that, but
they've made
he's always
this
just
lore.
been a really fun, interesting character.
They've built this lore around him, and he's not even, like I said, he's not the main character. He hasn't had his own game, but he keeps coming back, and they, like I said, that they built this lore, this like universe and storyline around him as a small side character, which I think is really cool.
Yeah. I'd love to know more about him.
Yeah, definitely. How familiar were you before you got the part with the franchise or even the character?
I didn't know the character at all. I had not known Hunk, and but the games. I mean, I played the original Resident Evil.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
And maybe 2, or at least some of 2, but definitely the first one. So I knew what the game was. I was very familiar with it. I mean, that was kind of. I mean, I don't know. I don't think I know if it was the first horror survival one, but it was the kind of the biggest, the most famous one.
Right,
so it felt like everybody had played it. To me, and in my age group, we were old enough to play it. I'm sure, younger kids were, stuck on, Mario games and stuff. But but for me, I'd played it, so I knew exactly what it was, and I was excited about working on the franchise. But I didn't go, "Oh, Hunk, awesome! I love him." I had no idea.
Right. And I think at that point, he was still a very small character. They hadn't brought him back yet for the other parts, and then he just kind of grew from there with being in the side games and the retelling of Raccoon City. I'm wondering, when you went into audition for the scientist, I'm wondering if you went to audition for Birkin, who is the guy that Hunk has killed several times. Probably.
That sounds like it might be right. I just don't remember offhand. It was a ways back, but yeah, I think so. I think it was a short role. He said a couple of things. I don't know if he got shot or what happened, but I mean, I'm going way back trying to remember. But that sounds like it might have been who I read for in that one.
What's funny is I've interviewed Terrence Rotolo, who plays the voice of Birkin. He started playing Birkin, I think, about the same time you started as Hunk with Umbrella Chronicles. And we had a discussion about how many times your character Hunk has killed his character Birkin.
Oh, that's funny.
And how he wants to see the opposite happen someday. Maybe he gets to pull the trigger this time. He doesn't know.
Yeah, who knows? Well, if he voiced Birkin in Umbrella Chronicles, then I did not play him, because I didn't just read for that. I came in and recorded for whatever the scientist was.
Okay.
So if Birkin has an actor, I just don't know. I just know. I guess I heard the name because it was in a script or something. I read it at one point, but I played some scientist.
Okay.
It wasn't a big role. It was, you know what I mean? Like I went in and did like 20 lines or something, and I was done. And then a week later, they brought me in for Hunk. So.
How many lines do you usually get as Hunk? He doesn't say a whole lot.
He doesn't. He's got efforts, and I think for the last game, I think I had maybe 2. I had at least 2, maybe 3 sessions. Okay. That were probably I think they were probably 2-hour sessions. I don't think they were 4-hour sessions.
Yeah, I think that because you're talking about going back for Resident Evil 2 remake. Yeah,
for the remake.
I think he spoke more in that game than any of the other games he's ever been in.
Yeah. The only one that I think
the other ones are kind of quick.
Yeah, maybe Raccoon City had a good amount of dialogue for him, but I don't think definitely Umbrella Chronicles and everything before that, he didn't really have a whole lot to say.
Right. So, he had some scenes in Raccoon City, Operation Raccoon City.
Right.
That one he did have some scenes. So I think that was probably one session, but it was probably like a good 4-hour session.
Do you do any of the performance, like motion capture stuff for this as well, or is it strictly voice?
For this, I've only done voice,
okay.
And I know we'll watch the performance capture because before it's animated, I'll see the actors. They'll show me the screen, and I'll see sometimes the entire sequence,
mm-hmm.
and they'll point out like that's you, and then these are the other guys in the sequence. And so as I'm doing the lines, I get to actually see physically what's happening, so that I'm not, bigger or smaller than the action that's happening on screen.
Yeah, to adjust yourself accordingly to what's going on.
Right. Exactly.
How was it working on the remake compared to the other ones, with being a new studio and everything and new technology?
Well, it didn't change too much for me, like I said, because I didn't do any of the mocap for it. I think every experience I've had has been a little bit, just a little bit different. Each one's I had a different director, so we always get a little different vibe. And some directors, I think usually the clients are there too. Producers are there, and sometimes the director might have a different idea of, we want to toughen him up a little bit this way, or we want to change his voice that way. And, I try not to change it too much. You want to follow what the director says, but at the same time, a director doesn't always know that that's a fan favorite character that you've come back.
Yeah, that's true.
Because they're looking at like, this guy's playing this guy named Hunk. The name Hunk doesn't seem like an important, it doesn't seem like an important character. If you see that, you're like, I don't know who this guy is. He's just some badass military guy, whatever. And he doesn't have a ton of lines compared to the main characters.
Right.
He doesn't really affect the plot. So I think sometimes some of the directors will try to, shift him a little this way or that way, which I like to a degree. Actually, I like it a lot, but once a character is established, I don't want like a director to completely be like, let's change up your voice 100% on this. Because then it's like, well, but I think the fans are gonna, you know what I mean? Because I do feel like, like for me, it bothers me if a character changes too much, from game to game, unless there's a reason for that character to change.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So I try to, keep it in the pocket to some degree and just, take the gist of, whatever emotional changes or intensity changes they're giving me.
Right. We keep seeing, outside of like Mercenaries and things like that, we keep seeing them relive that same event of that night of Raccoon City, RE2 storyline, that whole thing. We keep seeing that over and over. And we've been hoping to maybe see him branch out into his own game or something. What do you think of that?
Well, I feel it's a double-edged sword. I think, I would love for him to get his own game. That sounds awesome to me. As a working actor, that would be cool.
Right.
But it's got to be really good, and there's got to be a reason. When you take, hey, we'll see. We're going to find out with Boba Fett, right? Aren't they making a Boba Fett movie? It's tough when you take a character that we don't know that much about, and you try to make an entire movie about this mysterious character, because you can't do that and maintain the mystery.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. Like you got a lot of you got to be careful. Like, don't give too much, or like you got to like think, oh yeah, we're gonna do this. But it's like, well, I don't really think he'd do that type deal. And you could. It's kind of like a lot of like what are those Jack Reacher novels and stuff like that. They don't really focus on him too much. They don't reveal too much. It's always like one of those things where you learn like tidbits about him as you go along. And I think something like that for Hunk's character, could be like beneficial for him if there was a game like that where he goes and deals with different biological situations, but you get some inklings of his past along the way. I think because the thing of it is, like, the fans, from what I've noticed, they love the character. He doesn't have much of a background, but because he's snapping necks like Steven Seagal and stabbing people with like these extending blades, people just love that, and they just want to see him kick ass and like do like these really dark one-liners and all that stuff.
Yeah, I think if the story's there, I'd love to do it. Assuming there's a good, like, they're not just throwing him in there a whole bunch just because he's popular. If you've got a real story, you really have a backstory for him, and you want to bring some of that out, then I'm all for it.
No, you're right.
It's not as emotional a story. I would think, I don't know if he's going to take off his mask at some point if they do that, and we're going to get some actual personal life of him. But I don't see it being a lot of drama with him, like with his mask off, crying and calling out.
No.
I don't see that. So it'd be interesting. It'd be interesting. I definitely would love to do it. I would just hope it would be a nice, good story, so that the fans aren't like, oh crap, we thought we wanted more of this guy.
Yeah.
Till we got it. We were like, oh no, too much.
Yeah, I think a big part of the appeal too is, like you said, the mystery behind him, not knowing who this person is underneath the mask. And I think that speaks to a lot of people, because it lets you kind of interpret who he is and what his background is. And if you start making a game or a movie about him, you start filling in those blanks, then that corrupts what they've already developed and why they love him so much. Is it going to maintain, basically? But he is the kind of character that I think could fit very well into his own game, or even they make the CG movies, not the live action ones, but the computer graphic animated ones,
right,
where he could easily have his own movie.
Yeah, you know what? I think would be cool is if he had if they did a game where there were two plots going on simultaneously in two different parts of, let's say, the same town or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
So two different angles of coming at the same thing, and one of the sides is Hunk's side. And in the end, whoever the other hero is, and Hunk meet up at the end, and they both are only able to succeed because of however it works. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
something like that. So you're getting a half of a plot that is Hunk, so we're not getting too overexposed, but we're getting the emotional story on the other side, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
that actually makes a lot of sense, really.
Yeah,
that would be kind of cool, something like that. So it's not all hinged on his story, but we get a hell of a chunk about him, much more than we've ever gotten before. That would be nice.
Yeah, still him having been like a mysterious character. That actually works out in a whole fleshed out series.
Yeah. And it gives people a chance to play him more and see what he's capable of outside of, a quick speedrun mode that they keep giving him.
Yeah, definitely. It would be nice. They could stray from their formula.
Yeah.
Give him a little bit more. That would be nice.
Yeah, they've done it, so there's no reason why they can't keep trying something different.
It's true. Mm-hmm. And since you've been voicing him for so long, and they keep bringing you back, how is this character of Hunk developed for you? Like, what's your relation? What are your thoughts on him as a character?
Well, I'd love to have to tell you all about this character, but the problem is when somebody's mysterious like that. I mean, they've given me very little, and in fact, the stuff you've told me about him, the very little, like that in Code Veronica, there was an island that was there, and somebody mentioned. I mean, those aren't during my sessions.
Yeah.
So I don't even get those tidbits of information. So I just play him as Mr. Death, as just the ultimate badass who's just no nonsense. They've never, to my recollection, given me an emotional moment where I had doubts or a change of heart, or I've never had anything like that with him. So I haven't had a chance to explore the character very much. I pretty much am just doing my version of like this badass Hunk,
Mr. Death.
Yeah. So I could make up stuff, while I'm doing it, but that only informs you so much if you don't have a lot of character development throughout a game. And he's had zero character development throughout any of the games.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is okay. I'm not complaining about that, but it's hard for me to be like, oh, let me tell you all about Hunk, because it's, he's not super three-dimensional at this point. I know he has a life. I know he has other things, but when he's on the job, he's 100% on the job. At least that's how I've played him. So
yeah, exactly. So how did you get your start in voice acting? You've been doing this for a while. For what, about 15 to 17 years, maybe?
I think more. I think getting close to 20 years, I think.
Oh, okay.
When I was younger, I was kind of I was spread way, way, way too thin. I couldn't decide what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
I knew I didn't want to do a 9-to-5, traditional job. But I ended up spreading myself thin and kind of wanting to do everything. So I thought I'd be like a rapper and a dancer and an artist and an actor, and like I was going to do all these things, but I wasn't really focusing on. So I was doing nothing. So I was waiting tables, is what I'm trying to say. That's the short of it. Is I wasn't getting anywhere because I wasn't putting any of my eggs in. Really, I spread them out in all these baskets where I was okay at all these things.
Mm-hmm.
So my uncle called me up and he says, was like, hey, I know you've always done voices and such, and I'm doing a documentary we're filming, and I want to match my artwork with some poetry that I've written. And so he wanted the poetry written to match the artwork. So he had drawn all these tribes of Shire people, and they all had very unique looks. They looked like they were made of wood or stone or like all kinds of cool materials. And so some of them looked stoic or passionate, or they all different looks, different ages. And So anyway, I read for a couple of them, and he ended up casting me in a few roles. But to record, we went to an actual studio. Now he lives down in San Diego, so we went down to Del Mar area-ish. I think Encinitas, close to San Diego. And we went to a real studio, and I recorded. And I can't tell you how much fun I had. It didn't really hit me that was a thing. And so I kind of fell in love with it instantaneously. And immediately upon finishing recording, I was like looking for classes and trying to figure out how I could get started in doing this specifically professionally. So,
okay. And
so that was it. That's how I got started.
And so you were waiting tables before you started acting.
Oh, I was waiting tables into starting acting because
you don't make a whole lot.
Yeah, I don't want people to think like you go like, I'm going to be an actor. I'm quitting everything. Like, then you're going to starve to death. So no, waiting. The reason why waiting tables is so, it's just it's once you know how to do it, you know how to do it. It's an easy thing to get shifts covered. So if you do get an audition or a session, you can switch shifts with somebody. It's quick cash. From tips and stuff. I mean, it's a good job to have for that because it's flexible enough.
Yeah, it's flexible.
Very flexible. I did it for 10 years.
Oh, okay. Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think I waited tables for maybe 10 years too. So I was doing it for a while. But I mean, before I was really focused on on acting, I was, and I was too spread out. I was waiting tables. And then even when I was focused, I was doing it for a while. And it became like I would get a gig every like 2 or 3 months. And then I would get a gig every 2 months and then every month. And then it got to a point where I was starting to work like, twice a month, like not crazy, but it was enough that I was getting enough shifts covered. I kind of decided, I don't remember what the year was, but I said, you know what, come the end of the year, I'm done. I'm going to retire no matter what. So I kind of set the universe in motion and said, that's it. Whether I have enough gigs or not, I'm retiring at the end of December. And things picked up and I was getting so many shifts covered that I think somewhere around November, beginning of November, I just walked into the manager and I said, listen, you've been awesome. You've been helping me get shifts covered, but I know it's been a lot of work for you. And I was going to retire at the end of the year. So I want to ask you, would it be easier for me to put in my notice right now on you? Or would you rather I kept working? Is that easier for you? He was like, it would actually be easier if you retired now.
Because then I know what schedule I need to write.
Exactly. And he was awesome about it. But I was like, okay, well, then I'm going to do it. And so, I retired a month or two early. And thankfully, I haven't had to look back yet, because that was always my fear is like, oh, how many, weeks of unemployment before I'm like, oh, I got to start waiting tables again. That was always my fear. But it's been I have no idea now, 15 years or something.
Yeah. So was that a result of your agency that you were under, or was that just your voice getting around in these different roles and people picking you up, or the frequency as far as how often you started to get roles to where it became more frequent?
Well, it's a combination of things, when I first started, I could not get representation when I first started, but I did get somebody who wanted to manage me, and that helped. That got me a few gigs, and that got me into the union. And then I started slowly moving up the ladder of agencies. But at the same time, you're meeting people on the job. So, like, I worked on a show called, I did some dubbing on a show called Edgar and Ellen, and these were these little shorts based off a popular book series. And I think we recorded at Mark Grau in Burbank, if I remember right. And I worked with a gentleman named Kirk Thornton, a number of other people, too, that I actually don't remember who was there. I remember Kirk because we were taking a break, and I overheard him say something about anime. And I jumped into the conversation because I grew up on anime. And so I kind of went in this whole thing. I was like, oh, my God, I grew up on it. I love anime. And I kind of did some impersonations of some, types of characters in anime and stuff. And just as a lark, because I thought they were just like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
And he was like, hey, man, that sounds pretty good. He's like, let me get your information from you. He's like, I direct a lot of anime and I act in it and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, okay.
I was messing around.
Kind of was
glad
I didn't know that at the time, or I don't know that I would have been like, oh, but, then a few weeks later, he got me in over at Bang Zoom, and I went in and did something with him. And then it just kept going from there. So a lot of it is who you know also. So he would introduce me to someone and someone else would introduce me to someone here. And like when I worked on Resident Evil, that was so I worked on that with Mary Elizabeth, right? And then I think I worked with her again on Soul Calibur 4. And then after working with her that second time, then she had a role for me, and she just cast me at Studiopolis, which I'd never worked at before. And that was for Kimimaro, for Naruto, which was like a 10-episode arc. And that was huge because I hadn't worked for that studio. So that introduced me over to a whole new studio. And then I got more work on Bleach and things like that from them. So it's a combination of your agent and your agency, and then also, of course, your reputation for being in the industry and whose Rolodex, to borrow an old phrase, whose phone contact list you're on.
Right.
Let me translate for all the youngsters out there. A Rolodex is something you used to keep all the phone numbers on. So it's like a phone contact list is what I mean. Sorry.
Yeah, I think a big part of it is probably networking. Like you said, getting to know people, getting out there and making your name known and getting your word around, basically. And hopefully you get some roles out of it. Yeah,
it's a big chunk of it. It really is. You know, a lot of it is who you know, and but let me also stress how important it is to have a good agent. So I mean, that's a big deal too. But they both work in tandem. They both work together. So, and if you only have one at any given time, you lean heavily on that one.
Right. Yeah, agents do a lot for their clients. I know they put in a lot of work. They definitely get a lot of emails from me. And they're generally pretty awesome people. Nice to talk to, and they're straightforward. You know, they'll tell me if a guest isn't available or if they are or what the deal is. So I appreciate agents.
Cool.
Agents and managers. Speaking of anime and your favorite, you know, growing up and watching it and loving it, do you have a favorite anime series?
Yeah, my favorite anime series will always be Robotech.
Robotech, okay.
It will be Robotech. That was just I was at the right age. I used to ride my bike home from high school as quickly as I could, like I think it was my freshman year probably, just to get home for that. Because I don't know if you guys are familiar with Robotech, but it was on the same era, like things like Transformers and G.I. Joe were on at the same time.
Right.
And
it was like a mid 80s anime.
Absolutely. And it was on, you know, regular TV. And the main difference for me was it was a continuing plot. So there wasn't a lot of anime available at that point. I did watch some when I was very young, but for the most part, American shows do not have a continuing plot. It doesn't matter what order you watch Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, it's always self-contained episodes. Absolutely.
So Robotech had that. And that was kind of a big deal because most of the G.I. Joes and Transformers don't matter that much, the order. For most of them. I mean, I know later on they've had more, you know, arcing storylines, but early on they didn't. And, you know, whenever something blew up, like if a jet caught on fire in the air in G.I. Joe, you always saw a parachute come out.
Yeah.
And they had to do that. That was what they needed to do for their show. That's what that company wanted. And Robotech, people would be in a helicopter and it would catch on fire. And as it exploded, you would see their bodies disintegrate within the explosion.
Right. Yeah.
And that was very different from anything else on TV. You had main characters dying, things you just didn't have in G.I. Joe and Transformers. So I fell in love with it instantly. So it really sucked me in. So that will always be my favorite for sentimental reasons. I also believe it's a good show. But, you know, I watched Speed Racer and Marine Boy and Kimba the White Lion. I watched different Shogun Warriors cartoons like Transor Z and stuff when I was a kid. Other things I like later on. I mean, I like Death Note is one of my favorites.
Yeah, Death Note is awesome.
I do like Hunter x Hunter a lot. But there's a lot that I like. So there's a whole bunch of them. I went through the phase where I watched all the gory ones that don't have a ton of story, like Fist of the North Star. And,
right.
Oh, yeah.
And some of the semi-dirty ones, because you just have to at one point go, what? This exists? What? And then I went, oh, that's not for me. But I tried that. I was like, okay, that's too much.
Right. Now, do you still watch it today, or are you too busy to sit down and watch anime?
Oh, I love anime and I love animation as a whole. I think people would be surprised. It's hard even just to watch even the stuff I've done. You know, I remember I'd watched everything I'd done up to a certain point, but then you get busier. And not only does that mean you're busier, but then there's more anime and more shows and more games that you're in, and you just can't keep up anymore.
Yeah, definitely. Is there any shows that you watch that you're like, I want to be part of that? Or have you pretty much checked them off or just getting around to watching certain shows?
There's something was just announced that I would love to work on. I don't think it's going to happen, but I know they just announced Netflix is doing a Magic the Gathering.
Yeah, I
anime.
saw that.
And I've been playing Magic the Gathering since '94. So
Yeah, so it'll be awesome.
I can't tell you how many people called me and sent me links and were like, "Dude,
you need to go."
Dude. So yeah, I see things all the time, and so I'm a franchise nerd. I get excited about. I don't even have to know a lot about a franchise. Now, if I do love a franchise, for instance, like I worked on the Godzilla animes on Netflix.
Yeah.
And I remember somebody sent me a trailer and I thought, oh man, I want to work on that. And I think I sent an email to at least one studio saying, hey, this looks like the company that you do a lot of stuff for. If this comes your way, I'm not asking for any special favors, but just know I'd love to be involved, type of thing, Yeah. So, just because it's Godzilla. And I was like, dude, I hadn't worked on any Godzilla stuff. That sounds great. So I like that. I like Star Wars. I like Marvel. There's some stuff that would be awesome to work on.
Do you prefer dubbing or doing an original character? Is there a preference in there?
Well, I like them both. I mean, it's hard not to say doing an original character. There's so much more freedom,
right,
in doing an original character. It's there's something about that. It's just that's more fun. Let me put it that way. However, sometimes having limitations and parameters for your talent can be really exciting too, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it gives you a challenge.
It's a challenge, but it's like I'm trying to think of like a good example. What's the like if there's an app for videos or something, but your video can only be 10 seconds long or something like that,
Yeah, like Vine or something like that.
Like Vine. Like Vine. So because Vine has limitations, you can't do like a big feature film on it. But those limitations force you sometimes to be very creative in different ways.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
So I can appreciate that too. If I had to choose, I would choose original animation. Let's be honest, it pays more. It does allow you more freedom. You get different kinds of credit for both. Like I'd say maybe you get a little more industry credit for original animation, but you get sometimes more street credit for doing anime because anime fans are everywhere and they pay attention. So it's that's kind of a trade-off. So it just kind of depends. You get credit one way or the other, depending on what you're doing, but you get credit. So yeah, I mean, I do like them both. I wouldn't want to ever give up anime because I'm a fan of it. And I like it. There's something about anime. Like I'm just always going to love.
Right.
But I would always choose, if I had to choose, I would choose an original animated series over it. If there had to be a choice made, I would pretty much always, with obviously some exceptions,
Yeah. So on a character that I guess take it like Overwatch, Torbjorn, being he's original to that universe, he was conceptualized by Blizzard. Do they come in and give you notes like he needs to sound like this and this is his mannerisms and stuff, or are you allowed to kind of play around with what a little bit of direction?
Well, they'll give me direction, but I think if my memory serves me right, I mean, they sent me, I don't think an image, but I think a description of him. And they sent for the audition, they sent me a really nice monologue, which is great because he's never had a monologue to date. I mean, he hasn't, because he's just call outs and stuff. And he hasn't had a short. But this was a monologue, like if he was just chatting for like 3 paragraphs,
Okay. And
that was really nice. It gave me something to sink my teeth into, because I'll tell you, for a lot of these games like that and fighting games and stuff, all your auditions, they're just single lines.
It's true.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And they're cool, but it doesn't give you as much to sink your teeth into, and it makes sense that they send you single lines because that's what you're going to be doing for the most part.
Right.
But this was nice because it told me about him. It was a great selection of paragraphs that really gave you an idea of what he liked and he didn't like, and he was complaining about things and bragging about other things and taking pride in his craftsmanship, and it was good. And they gave a description of who he was, and then I went with that. I was cast from that. I don't believe there was no callback in this particular case. And then was going in and then playing my audition, and maybe we tweaked it a little bit. We always with Torbjorn, he's in pirate territory vocally, just where his voice is placed.
Right.
With the grumbly. So we're always careful. We're always careful. I'll be like, I might do 2-3 takes of something, and if I'm like, well, that last one sounded too piratey, or if they tell me, yeah, you went a little in the pirate, we'll hit that again and try to steer away from that. So
yeah. Did you come up with that voice just off of the notes, or was that something you just had stored that you were waiting for a chance to use it?
No, it was off of the notes. In fact, I remember distinctly because I think they described him as dwarf-like.
Oh, okay.
And I think the original thing I did, like in my head when I looked at it, I wanted to go Scottish because that's kind of like, a lot of the dwarves have that kind of a thing, So, I was right back here. So there was that thing. So I was started right there, right? And I was like, I know he's not, because it said that he was Swedish. So I'm like, okay, but that's where I placed him first. And it was funny, just holding it in that place. I really wanted to do a Scottish thing. So I remember having to kind of focus that out, like concentrate to get that out and get the other dialect in. And then sometimes now I have the opposite. If I know I'm going in for something Scottish, I'm like, all right, let me practice a little while. Let me read a couple of pages out of something so that I don't go into Torbs.
Yeah.
Because you get comfortable with something sometimes and your mouth wants to slip back into that. If that makes sense.
No, that's true. Like I used to when I used to work the restaurants, and sometimes I'd have to be a host of the front door if we were overstaffed on the floor and everybody up. Like I'd just be doing impressions up front for people and stuff like that. And then sometimes I would answer the actual the phone like that. And one time I answered the phone, and it was my boss, and she goes, "Tony, what are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, was I stuck in Christopher Walken mode again?" And she goes, "Yes, you were." I was like, "Oh, I do apologize."
That's awesome. That's great. You should have just played it off and said that you were Christopher Walken and no one was there, and you just picked up the phone.
The phone was ringing.
Why are you calling my number all the time? Staring at me.
Wow.
Awesome.
To get your voices, because you do a wide variety, how do you practice those? Like, where do you find that range to go into these, something like Torbjorn, where it's a Swedish / sort of Scottish, sort of pirate-ish, grumbly?
It's all different. I mean, there's certain ones that you've just always done. Some of them you get artwork. Artwork does an amazing thing for you. You've got to take into account their descriptions.
Right.
Some of it's playing around. Some of it's direction. Because sometimes you get a character on the spot. You are at a session and they don't tell you what you're going to do, and then you get there and then they say, "Okay, here's what we're doing. This is the guy. Here's what he looks like. Here's the deal." So you're pretty much giving the director something to work with, and between the two of you, you're molding it into something that everybody's happy with.
Right.
But yeah, it's different every time. I mean, sometimes you do just pull. I mean. I may do like 3 or 4 different like old man voices. So if I know it's going to be an old man, and it's kind of like, well, what kind of show is this? How goofy is it? How serious is it? You know what I mean? How realistic? Are we grounded, or are we just kind of, zany anime style?
Yeah.
And then you can always alter it a little bit by throwing something nasal in there, or a lisp, or you can't necessarily do a stutter, because especially if it's anime.
Yeah.
But there's all kinds of ways, whether it's a dialect or a phrasing, like just a way that you talk to some degree, and just an attitude. Because the same basic placement for a voice, playing a really grumpy old man versus a really mischievous, maybe horny old man or something, is a totally different vibe. It's the same voice, but it's going to feel totally different if the guy is constantly suggestive. As opposed to grumbly and unhappy. So,
Yeah.
So I'm always coming up with new stuff. I don't at all feel like I've come up with everything. I'm sure there'll be some stuff later on that I'll be like, even stuff that I've come up with semi-recently, I'm like, why didn't I do that earlier? Where did that come from? Like, crap, I could have been doing this all the time.
Yeah.
So
that's true. Like that happens. I think that happens to like a lot of people who are like professionals, because like my full-time job is a photographer. So I'll be doing shoots with people, whether it's like cosplay ones or modeling ones. And then I'll be home. I'll sit down, I'll relax. And I'm thinking, oh man, that was such a great shoot. Crap, that pose would have been perfect.
Right.
Yeah. Hindsight.
Yeah, you never know. But I'm always adding new stuff to the repertoire. And then it's also kind of rehashing and even remembering sometimes. Some things you don't use for a long time. I can listen to an old audition of mine or an old demo of mine and go, oh yeah, I totally forgot. Like I might not even sound the same now, but even doing that voice, 15 years later, I might find something cool in it. And it's like, oh yeah, I forgot that. That used to be one of when I had like 12 go-to voices. That was one of them. Where did that go?
Yeah. And you work it back into
you get
your
cast for a lot of this. Yeah. Sometimes it's a lot of the same stuff. And then sometimes you get an audition that's so out there that I shouldn't say sometimes, frequently, that you go on YouTube and you're researching a dialect or something and you're trying something new. You're like, oh, I've never done this before. and you research it and do the best you can. And sometimes you nail it. Sometimes you get a quarter of the way there, but the next time that audition comes up, you find like, wow, that like a year ago, me doing that voice for a half an hour helped because now I'm better at it.
Yeah. You kind of familiarize, acclimated yourself to it.
Yeah, you pull from that stuff, even if it was an audition. You're like, oh, I'm a little better at this thing now because I did it, 6 months ago for an audition. And even though it was just an audition, it helped. It's somewhere in my subconscious, and I've had some distance from it, and I think I can hear it better, and I'm doing a better job.
Yeah. So out of the many great roles you have, which one do you think which ones do you think are your favorite to perform?
I like Hisoka a lot from Hunter x Hunter. He's one of my faves. He was very different. I felt like, for me at least, and he's a very different character. And I miss him already. He was very unpredictable in a fun, playful way. So he was a lot of fun. He was fun to be, if that makes sense. I wouldn't want to be him in real life. He's nothing like me, but he was fun to be. Like, I liked very much getting called in for those sessions. Huh. One of the shows I had the most fun on is, I think people know it a little better in 5 years, because I think the younger crowd was watching it, and in 5 years they'll all be hitting the cons. But it was a show on Netflix still on called Glitter Force, which is based on a show called what is it, Precure, I think is what it's called. And Saban produced it, and they let me play 3 of the 4 villains throughout it. It's a magical girl show, so it's very Sailor Moon-esque in some ways, and the girls are super sparkly and happy and love and hearts and puppy dog tails and all that stuff. And then the villains are the ones that kind of bring the evil. So they're fun. They're not super scary, but they're just fun, and they argue amongst each other. And anyway, they let me, so I had all these conversations with myself, and they gave us a lot of freedom to, we obviously always stick to the script, but then I would improv lines, and I'm not the only one. We improv lines a lot of times, and I cannot tell you how much of it was used. A lot. So I can watch this series now, and it just makes me laugh because it's funny, and so much of it was used, and my daughters love the show. So that was one of the more fun shows I've ever worked on. And I really, if you're into a magical girl thing, it is actually highly entertaining. I really love it.
It's a lot of that's a lot of good roles right there too. Like some of my favorite works that I've heard you do over the years. I think one of the best ones was Coyote Stark from Bleach.
Oh, okay, cool.
That was a character like I instantly fell in love with, because like he's just this lazy loner character, and he had like a good arc, because just everything about his character was just like, even though he always seemed like really lazy and uninterested in stuff, he was just this cool character. And that was just like a character that I drew him a lot back in the day, because like I was out of high school by that point, but I would stop because like back then you had to watch a lot of stuff on YouTube when they would split the videos up. Like for an episode you have to watch like it in 3 parts, but that was a great role. That one I actually remember recording, and then I got called back in for some pickups, and the notes were just make him, Japan said, make him way more lazy. That was a Viz media was like, he's way lazier than you did. So, I thought I was doing lazy, but then they very much emphasized like, no, like super lazy, lazier. That was my note. So I remember picking up a couple of lines like, okay, let's make him lazier. And and I got it. It made sense after, Yeah, it's true. Then when he woke up, when he was ready to fight, it was just like, oh crap, this guy's stronger than he's letting on.
Yeah,
right. Well, that's why he was so lazy. He never has a challenge.
Conserving everything.
Well, that was great. And Hawkmoth, that's a great character. My really good friend, she got me into that entire series, and he's just, and especially like in the last season where they actually gave him a little bit more to do.
Thank God.
Yeah. Like, oh my God, it's just insane. And like I've met Bryce Papenbrook, who does Cat Noir and everything, and such a nice guy. And
he's great. He's one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet.
Yeah, well, like I mean, him and I were talking. It was like at Boston Comic Con, and his father actually voiced a character in one of the Resident Evil games, one of the Outbreak games.
Mm-hmm.
So I know his dad unfortunately passed away many years ago. So I actually had him sign one of his dad's works, and he was just like in awe. Plus, like both he and I and his dad, like
that's cool.
Yeah, like he was in awe that like people remembered his dad, and his dad had a lot of good roles when he was around, and he did that work. And then we were all talking martial arts because me and Bryce were both martial artists, so it's like we had a good time. We had a great time talking. I almost like took up his like whole time. I felt bad, but he was like, no, don't worry. But yeah, like when like I said, just Hawkmoth is a really cool character, and I'm glad they finally gave him a little bit more to do than just hiding in a little like little secret lair.
Oh, definitely. Hawkmoth's an interesting character for me, and I'm glad he's getting more. Also, he is probably one of the more. He's one of the more cliche characters that I play, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah.
He's at least as Hawkmoth. When he's Hawkmoth, he's pretty straightforward, and especially because the early writing in it was very like, it's you're sad. I am Hawkmoth, and you're this, and do this for me. And no, the Marikla, I'll get next time. It was very straightforward. Every episode had that going. The more they're giving him, he's becoming much, much more interesting, and I kind of like the dichotomy of how cliche he is. I mean, vocally, he's cliche. I hope that makes sense to you, if you know what I mean.
Oh no, I do. Yeah, like there is
not the most interesting
but how he's
character.
Portrayed is very cliche. But there is more to the character.
There is more to the character, yes. But if you just listen to him, it's like, yeah, he's a bad guy. I'm doing a bad guy voice. He's clearly bad guy. It's it's not like, oh, he's this and he's that. I mean, he is those things, but some of those elements have only started to show themselves, like whether he's lonely or what his real motivations are, like have only started to show themselves semi-recently. And I get a kick out of that. Did.
Yeah.
And I get a kick out of it because you never know when you're doing a role. But it's nice because as cliche as he is, I don't know if I played a villain that I don't feel like he was a rehash of any villain I played. So maybe I was steering away from how cliche he was for so long, but eventually I got around to it and it seemed to fit. If that makes sense?
No, yeah, that does. That makes total sense to me.
You're like, I don't want to do this cliche thing, but it just came and it just worked for him. And especially because the way we, record that, it's actually a little tough on the dub to record that because the scratch track that they animate to, the guy who does it kind of whispers the lines, and whispering is very different than talking. Mm-hmm. So if I'm taking my time and using all my that's a lot more mouth movement and time and all kinds of stuff that's happening, as opposed to if I'm just doing it like this, I can, it's much. And so it's kind of recorded originally in a whisper tone. And then I come in and do it non-whispery. And also, by the way, they take out every time that the other actor breathes is gone. So he has those long monologues that he does. And those long monologues, they've taken all the breath out. And he got to breathe when he did it. They then took the breath out and then they animated it. And now I've got to do it without breathing. So he's always, there's always a challenge going in for him for some strange technical reasons. Huh. He's a fun character to play, but it's always like, if I could play any of my characters and we could switch it to like original, and that I think it would affect the most, it would be that. I would love for Miraculous if it was any way. I mean, I don't think it's going to, but if it ever was an original animated series, I would love the amount of freedom that would give me more than any other character I've ever played. It would be like, oh, are you giving me this? This is the ultimate gift. Thank you so much. Huh. I can pause between thoughts. You know what I mean? I have time to get from here to here without having to do it, boom, 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 boom. Right. That would be fantastic. I would love that freedom with that character.
Interesting. Now, being a parent and your kids watch your shows and stuff, what is that like to see your kids experience something that you've worked on and to enjoy your characters and your work and stuff like that?
You know what? I'm blessed because both of my girls are 8 and 4 right now. Actually, they're 8 and almost 4, but same difference. And they watch a lot of my shows. Clearly, there's shows that they don't watch.
Right.
But like I mentioned, they really liked Glitter Force. My older daughter watched Sailor Moon. They love Miraculous. Both of them. I'm not even thinking of all the shows right now. I did something recently on Big City Greens, and that's like my older daughter's favorite show. And so there's a bunch of shows that they watch. So it's kind of funny. They like Fresh Beat Band of Spies, which is a show I did on Nickelodeon for a while.
Right.
So it's like because I have all that stuff, I record it, so we have it. So they have a very skewed view of how much stuff I'm in. They probably think I'm in everything, which is funny. But I kind of
not too
secretly, well, there's a lot I'm not in, but I mean, they're going to grow up and be like, oh man, my dad was in everything. And that's kind of a cool thing, and that they care.
Yeah.
If they, because if they were a little older, and maybe when they do get older, they'll be like, whatever, Dad, it doesn't much, just enough. But at this point, they are very into it and they love it and they're proud of it. And every once in a while, I pick up my daughter from school and she's like, Dad, can you sign an autograph for one of my friends?
Oh.
And I'll be like, well, how do they know about me? Like, well, I kind of told her. It's like, all right. So it's cute because it's like, oh, they're bragging about me. And that's I know thing. Like teenage years are going to hit and they're going to be like, oh God, Dad, don't just drop me off a block away from school. So I enjoy it, and I couldn't love that anymore. It's a fantastic age for them with what I do for a living. So I'm loving
definitely.
it.
Do you tell them what shows and what characters you're in, or do they just pick you out sometimes?
Both.
Both. Okay.
Yes. Sometimes they can pick me out. Other times I will tell them. They're pretty good because when you live with somebody and you hear different voices and bedtime stories and on different shows as well. I fool them every now and then, but for the most part, they usually can tell. And like
they recognize it.
My older daughter, she's old enough. She went with me to the theater to see My Hero Academia, Two Heroes, and One Piece Film Gold. She was old enough to see both of those in the theater, not my younger, but and that was a great experience too, to actually go to the theater, a big screen, and I had good sized roles in those.
You were the main villain.
You were in My Hero.
My Hero.
But it could be a show because sometimes we go, let's go see Storks. Wait, there he is. Did you hear it? Oh, because that's it. so there's that kind of stuff too. We were like, Hotel Transylvania. Wait, listen. Oh, okay. Did you hear it? So it's nice when it's like very clear and obvious because most of the stuff I do doesn't play in the theater. So it's nice when we can go to the theater and watch Dad in a movie. So and then same with my wife coming to do that. It happens every once in a while, and it's a really nice experience to have.
Yeah, I can imagine just being a parent and having your kids, enjoy your work and to be able to experience it and enjoy it as a whole, as a show with the story behind it, but also to know that you made that part of something they're enjoying. That's got to be a really cool feeling. It's great.
It's really great. And I'll never drag them to one of my movies. It's only because they are into it and want that experience and they can enjoy it. Last thing I want to do is drag somebody to a movie they don't want to see for any reason,
right?
Much less because I'm in it. But so far it's worked out great.
Yeah, definitely. You play a lot of villains in your career, but you also have your heroes in there. Which one do you prefer, villain or hero?
Well, let me think about it. I guess I like being the villain a little better.
Yeah, of course. What are you talking about? Who wants to be the hero? I don't want to be the hero. Not nearly as fun.
Right? Villains get to have all the fun.
Of course they do. No, they're the best. They're the best. I love playing the villains. Listen, I like having a challenge and I like new things, and I do like to play the hero. But if I really was required to choose, I would just be like, yeah, villains, cool. I'm happy with that.
Awesome. Now, which character do you think the fans like the most? Which ones do you see the most when you do conventions and stuff?
Oh, it's pretty. There's a triad, I think. The most popular is Torbjorn because Overwatch is still huge right now.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
The next most popular, depending on the day, are Hawkmoth and Hisoka. And it depends on the day, because I'll have a day where everybody's like, oh my God, Hisoka, no way. Or I'll have a day where everybody is all about Hawkmoth. So that can go either way with them. I can't really tell you which one's more popular. And then, who's popular really is Masayoshi Ishido from Persona 5. The fans seem to really like that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Persona 5 is huge for so many people.
The fans dig that. We get a lot of JoJo fans. So the Speedwagon thing's a big deal for a good chunk of people.
Yeah, definitely.
I think those are the biggest ones. We do get some Gundam fans. We get some, Sonic the Hedgehog fans. People still, the longest running fave is definitely Kimimaro. Like, people still are like, dude. They make me feel old, though, because they're like, oh, my God, when I was in kindergarten. And I'm like, oh, shut up. Stop right there, man. Just stop. I don't want to know it was that long ago for you. And it's like a full-grown man standing in front of me.
Yeah.
Like, dude, shut up. That's not possible.
Beard and everything.
Yeah, you're like, dude, come on. You've got a walker. That's not possible. How old am I? So, those are some of the top ones. But you know what's kind of cool is that everybody has their own favorites. So right when I least expect it, someone will come up who loves Johann from Monster or Simon Belmont from Castlevania.
Yeah,
it's something that I don't get as much love for, and they'll just be like, "Oh my god, I love Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles" or something. And I like that. I like that I can never be sure who they're going to be a fan of.
Yeah, you've got like a lot of like big roles too. Like, I mean, I know you're Zach from Dead or Alive. He's one of my best characters.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, that's right.
he's always been a good character. I know that you were Brian Fury. I think it was Street Fighter Cross Tekken.
Yeah,
just Fury. In one. I had one quick appearance as him. I don't know. I mean, I assume they've done him since because that was years ago. So
yeah, it was like 2011, 2012. I think that game came out.
Yeah. So I think that was a role that I didn't get to stick and keep, but that's part of the biz. That happens, and even the roles that I'm very comfortable with and that I'd honestly like to keep forever. I know there's going to come a time where they're like, "Hey, we're recasting everybody in Sonic, or we're recasting all of Resident Evil, or we're whatever." It's bound to happen at some point. I don't look forward to it because it becomes nice after when you're like Vector the Crocodile for like 10 years or something, like you just kind of are like, oh, you
kind of make the character your own in many ways.
Yeah, and I don't take it for granted because I know that it's not my character, and they can, I can always say I did it for these games, but I really enjoy being able to say, yeah, that's been me, and it'll be a little different when I have to say, oh yeah, well, not the new one, but I was for these, so.
That's true. Yeah,
it is what it is, and I'm grateful and thankful for all the time I get with. Some characters are just a quick little, ships passing in the night, and I get to, voice them once or in something small. And other characters I've gotten to hold on to for longer, and that's always nice when it can happen.
Yeah,
I mean, I think you don't have to worry about Hunk ever getting a new voice actor because you've been voicing him since 2007. So that seems to be one that people seem to have locked you in with.
Yeah.
Well, so far, the one that was interesting for me was the Simon Belmont, because
that's right.
I only did Simon in Judgment, which was a fighter game.
Back on the Wii, yeah, I remember that.
Back on the Wii, so it wasn't even the normal style of side-scroller for Castlevania at all, and I don't think it was a fan favorite because it was so different.
Yeah, it was okay. Very different.
Yeah, I think it was okay.
I enjoyed it because it was so different, and like you could have fun with it. Like it was so over the top and strange. You got to make your own fun with it, and I actually Simon was one of the characters I used most in that game.
Okay, so sure. I mean, but then so many years passed, and then when they called me in, for Smash Brothers Ultimate, that was a surprise for me because I didn't know I was going to be called in to work on Smash Brothers Ultimate, but also I had no reason to think I would ever voice Simon again because it had been so long.
Oh yeah.
So it wasn't like I auditioned and they were like, "Oh yeah, let's use this guy." They just were calling me in because I was, I guess, the last guy, and maybe they liked it, or maybe I was just the last guy. Let's get him. No one else has done him in the video game since. I don't think he'd had a voice in a game since. I could be wrong.
So
but
they had the Netflix series, but they went big time, Hollywood
yes,
for that.
Was different.
Well, yeah, that was exactly. that was Trevor Belmont. That Simon was just
Trevor,
not brought
Simon,
back in a lot of other things. It was always a different Belmont or another character.
Right.
That's what I think the case was. So, but at any rate, I never would have, expected it. But it would have bummed me out slightly if the game came out and it was Simon Belmont and somebody else. But not like I would have lost sleep because I don't own, like I said, we don't own these characters. And God, if you haven't done it for 10 years, it wouldn't have completely shocked me that somebody new was doing it. It might have been more shocking that they called me in.
Yeah, that's
like,
true.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
I'm him. Cool.
Right.
I didn't know we had established that like in multiple games. I guess we kind of have now. So hopefully I'd love to do, for something I'd love to do would be an actual traditional side scroller with him.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You know what I mean? Just to do an actual Castlevania game in the classic style and do his voice would be pretty badass. I'll put that on my hopeful bucket list.
Yeah, because you're a gamer too. You grew up playing games. You have the ones. Obviously, you've acted in so many of them. And I've heard, from your previous interviews and things like that you're pretty much, you're a pretty big gamer yourself. You like playing games.
Well, I just have no time anymore.
Yeah,
I kind of suck as a gamer now. I used to be a gamer. So sad.
Is there a favorite game growing up or nowadays that you when you get a chance to play, you like to go to, or just when you were a kid, that's something you always had to play?
Well, my favorite game series is Tomb Raider. Those have just been my favorites since the first Tomb Raider.
Yeah.
And they were all great except for one where they tried to change the whole engine on it. But other than that one, they've all been great. As a kid, I'm trying to think what games like just super jump out. Obviously, when Super Mario Brothers came out, that was awesome at the time. I loved the Dragon's Lair Space Ace games when I was a kid in the arcades. Those blew my mind. I played them every day. For home system, when was it? Phantasy Star. Oh my God. I played the crap out of Phantasy Star when that came out. I thought it was the greatest game of all time. I played a lot of Skyrim when that came out.
Oh, Skyrim. You've got a lot of voices in there.
That stole a lot of lives from people.
Yes. Oh my God.
Well, you have one major character that everybody hates in Skyrim. That's all you.
What do you mean? I don't know what you're talking about.
Right?
I have no idea what you're referring to. My most hated character. People love to hate him, so it's good.
They do.
Good.
I've seen the videos of people enacting their vengeance on him.
I know they're great. You know what? I'll tell you what. If you haven't seen it, you've got to look up Nazim. Oh God, what is it called? There's like a music video that somebody made, and it's the funniest thing. It's one of the funniest things I've ever seen, at least for me, because I found it out of nowhere and it just took me by surprise. But there's a whole little scene because they'll take my dialogue, they'll take my words and switch around the order of them so they can make me say whatever they want me to say. So they make me say a few suggestive things, so it's not necessarily for the young kids.
Okay.
And then but it's animated too within the game, so it looks just right in the game. And then he goes into this whole song and dance routine with my voice.
That's crazy.
And it's hilarious.
That's awesome.
Super funny. It's very suggestive, but it's great.
Right. So do you have any advice for people who are wanting to get into voice acting, or maybe who are just starting out?
Yes. Don't take my jobs. No, of course. If it, I don't know what is my advice at it. I guess. I mean, people know the resources, so I guess I won't get into resources. But do it because you love it. Enter voiceover as a career in its entirety, meaning. Sometimes I meet people who are like, I want to do anime. And it's like, no, you don't. You don't want to do anime. You want to do voiceover, right? Because that's not the way to, I mean, you can love anime and also want to do that. But like your goal shouldn't be to do anime. Because anime, as much as I love it, is like dubbing in general is like the lowest paid aspect of voiceover. And not only that, it's like saying you want to act, but you only want to act in horror movies or something.
Right.
So it's like, I mean, yeah, it's like, why won't you be an actor? So you're going to turn down when somebody's like, we got this cool movie, it's called Lord of the Rings. You're going to turn it down because it's not a horror movie? So so it's like, take the whole thing. Take a bite out of everything. You're going to want to try to do commercial work. You're going to want to do movies. You're going to want to do TV. You're going to want to do original animation. If you can do some live action dubbing on Netflix and that works for you. If you get to the point where you can pick and choose, then power to you. And you do whatever you want to do. I would just say, if there's things you don't want to do for whatever reasons, like religious reasons or this, then by all means, don't do that. If Grand Theft Auto is something you don't want to do, feel free to turn that down. But other than that, try to do as much as you can and do it because you love it. Know there may be some struggle involved. Your schedule is going to be wacky. It's not 9 to 5.
Yeah.
Work when you can all the time. Do whatever you can. You never know which gig you're going to do, especially when you're getting started. Like, do everything when you're started. If your friend's like, hey, you want to record my answering machine? Be like, yes.
Yes.
Because you never know what gig is going to help you just meet one person.
Exactly.
And that one person's going to get you 5 more jobs and 6 more connections. And it just keeps snowballing from there, either quickly or slowly. But at any rate, just know it's important. Everybody you meet, treat everybody you meet, if you're working like they've been doing this forever and they're far more important than you. Because 9 times out of 10, you're going to be right. You'll be like, I don't know who the hell that dude is. He must be new. But if you treat them the right way and then you go home and you Google them, you're like, oh my God, this dude voiced everything in my childhood. So,
that's kind of how it is for me. When I talk to our guest, it's usually just geeking out the whole time because all of you have been, so many awesome roles that I've grown up watching or that I watch nowadays or characters I've played in games. And it's surreal,
That's
Uh,
crazy.
to speak. Exactly.
Super crazy, guys. You're super awesome roles. I love you. I'm such a big fan. So, you were in what's that show? Oh my God, I'm freaking out right now. Super cool, super cool, super cool.
Yeah, it's crazy. The roles they do kind of pile up after a while, and I don't know. It's trippy.
True.
It's weird. I don't know if there's a point where I stop and take a deep breath and look at what I've done, but I'm much more focused in what's next, keeping busy.
Right.
What's next? I'll get old at some point and I'll go, well, look at all this is cool. Remember that? Oh, remember Lupin? Oh God. But for now it's like, I don't know. It's cool. I'm very proud of the work I've done. And if the me and like 20-year ago me knew the work of the resume I was going to have now, he would be pretty impressed.
Yeah, definitely.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
As me now currently, I definitely don't impress myself. There's always more I want to do. I more critique myself and why did I do it like this? And let me just learn from that. And the next one I'm going to do this way. And it's just staying in the grind, I think, because if you hover on anything you've done for too long, I don't know. I don't know if that's a good thing. You just got to keep going and learn and get better and try to do bigger and better things. And I hope I'll keep on working for the next, 20 years and beyond, because I definitely love what I do. And I'm more shocked than anything that anybody cares, to be honest.
You don't want to get complacent too. You got to keep moving forward. Like you said, if you dwell on something and you stick on it and then you get comfortable with it, then something's going to come along and throw you off. So just keep moving forward, keep picking up parts and working on new things, new techniques, right?
Yeah. It's basically what you got to do.
Yeah.
There's always new ground. It's not like I'm in every, Disney show and Disney movie. So there's clearly more road that I'd like to cover. The truth is, if I love what I do, and if the next 20 years were exactly like this 20 years has been, I'm a happy guy. I'm good. I'm golden. But I'm still gonna strive for even more. But the truth is, I know just being able to work doing what I love and support myself is an absolute blessing, and I'm crazy thankful for that. And then the icing on the cake is that I would do an interview like this because anybody out there would even care. I mean, that's such a weird thing to me, but it's nice.
Yeah, I mean, well, like the thing is, you've played such a variety of characters, such big characters, smaller characters, and then you get those people that like can tell you sometimes it's like, hey, I was going through a rough time in my life. I watched your content when this stuff happens and it hits, because we've gotten that here on our show. Like people have watched our live streams and the stuff we talk about, and just being over the top crazy. Because like when I stream video games, I go way over the top and people love it. I'll start doing impressions and it makes people laugh. And that's the thing. You've made it when you can make another person smile, in my opinion, and make their day. I mean, you're guest at cons. You probably get that all the time.
It's an amazing thing to get. Yeah, it's very cool. And then it's weird when you're talking to somebody and they're asking like what you did over the weekend, because it sounds so weird. It's such a different world.
Right.
No, it does though, because if I'm talking to somebody if I'm talking to somebody who I super know, a good friend, they're like, oh, how'd the con go? Whatever, they understand. But if you're talking to somebody you don't know that well, you can't really be like, oh, they flew me out to this place and I signed autograph. They're like, who are you? What are you talking about? It's like, oh, yeah, that does sound freaking weird. It's weird. It's just a weird thing. It's, because I'm not, I'm not, Tom Cruise. It's weird. People are like, well, why would anybody? It's like, I don't know. I just do what I love to do, but I am a fan of pop culture too. So I get it. Cause I used to go to these cons and be like, oh my God, that's so-and-so from this. And I'm impressed with other voice actors, on a daily basis. So, so I get it.
Yeah. I just came from a con this weekend where I got to meet a bunch of awesome people and did my, my fanboy routine.
Nice.
After all those autographs you got, dude, I'm surprised you have any money left in your account.
I
you
don't.
met and
I
took
don't.
pictures with everybody.
I don't. I saved for a while for that one. Speaking of conventions, do you have any conventions coming up here that you can announce for people to go meet you, or any projects you're working on that you can talk about?
There's probably, I don't know if there's any projects, that I can work on. I mean, we still got more Miraculous coming, or we're still working on that stuff. Yeah, I'd say, the thing to do is just to follow me on social media, because I love to announce stuff as soon as I can.
Right.
But I don't usually have something like in my back pocket. I mean, I'm trying to think right now. I'll tell you, there's something on, I can tell you some things that came out recently. There's something called, I think it's Revelations on anime series on Netflix, which I got to play a kind of a different character than I usually do. He looks like a little stuffed animal. He's like a little cute teddy bear with a hat and a cigar. So his name's Nicholas. So is that what it's called? Did I say? Yeah. Well, I think. Well, yeah. Anyway, so that's out. There's a show called Dennis and Nasher that was just announced, also for animated stuff. That's a little more of the younger audience.
Okay.
Like 8 years old kind of a thing, but not the other one though. Not the anime one. That's got blood and stuff, and people are getting all messed up. So there's some cursing. So that's different. But yeah, I would say check me out on Twitter. I'm at Silvertalkie, SILVERTALKIE. I'm on Facebook at, not as often, but at Keith Silverstein Voice Artist. And I'm just playing Keith Silverstein on Instagram. And I try my best to update when I can with a new character announcement or show announcement. Oh, I guess I can say, I believe starting, I think it's this weekend. And if I'm wrong, I'm sorry. But I think this weekend for a Toonami Adult Swim, they're going to start airing the Gundam the old series. They're breaking it up into episodes. And I play Char, and that has not aired. To my understanding, on Toonami. So
you broke up there one more time.
Ooh,
yeah, it went all robot.
That was super secret.
Oh,
robot. I was saying Toonami. I don't think it's aired before, but they're starting, I believe, this Saturday with Gundam: The Origin, which they're breaking up into episodes.
Oh, okay.
And I think it's this Saturday, Toonami Adult Swim, and I play Char Aznavour, and that has not aired on Toonami before. They've aired Gundam Unicorn, but not this one. So if you want to know more about Char Aznavour before Full Frontal and all that stuff, that's where to go for it.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
Yeah, very cool series. So that's starting up. So that I can announce. That's fine. I can say that.
I love where we've come from when Toonami was launched when I was a kid. Actually, I wasn't a kid. I was a teenager in high school. When Toonami launched and it started bringing in the anime, and it's grown to where although it's not daily like it used to be, I miss that. It used to be every day at this time you can go watch Dragon Ball or, something was going on. But now you get this late night series because they realize, I think, that their fan base for anime has grown with them. They're not kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the content has grown with the fans as well. So it's late Saturday night, but it's like 5 hours of nonstop anime, which is ridiculous. I love it. It's awesome. If you're willing to stay up.
Keeps going.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am. I'll try to live tweet this Saturday if I can, along with it to get started. It's hard to do consecutively, but I had a good run on Hunter x Hunter. I must have done it for like 70 episodes. I live tweeted, which is
awesome.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
I did it for a while, but then it got ahead of me, and they changed the time. They put it later, and that made it harder.
Yeah.
But I'll try. So if you guys are on Twitter, whatever time that is this Saturday, I'll look it up before then, and we can talk back and forth about what we're watching, which is kind of fun. And I also really love that Toonami brings a whole new audience in, because JoJo's Bizarre Adventure had been out on DVD for a year and a half or 2 years before they put it on Toonami, and nobody knew it was out. And everybody was like, oh my God, they made an anime. They dubbed this? They dubbed it? Oh my God. People had no idea. So it's a whole different thing. Once it's out there, everybody knew. Yeah, because I just thought, it failed, it flopped because nobody knows about it. It's been out for 2 years.
No, it just had to take its time to hit Toonami, and then it hit the bigger audience. People found out, and there comes that fan base.
Yeah, so it's a trip. So hopefully people will dig this. But it's always nice when something's on Toonami, just because it really puts it out there for the fans, which is nice. And I enjoy the opportunity to watch with the fans. I found that's a lot of fun.
So saying that's something unique. I don't think a whole lot of people do that in general, just to be able to hang out and live tweet, and fans can talk back and forth with you over Twitter while they're watching your performance in the show. That's pretty cool.
It's very cool. It's a very cool thing. And I still get people that see me in, Boruto or something, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I saw this episode and this was cool and that was you," and I always read those. I think it's an amazing form of communication to have a direct line to people that are watching your stuff, your shows, and to be able to communicate back with them. Yeah, it's cool. It's very, very cool, and I'm very appreciative of it. So, for everybody that tweets at me with, "Hey, I heard you on this," or whatever, I love it. I love having, some kind of a relationship with the, fans of the shows. So it's and the games. It's really cool.
Right. So if you're not already following Keith, make sure you go follow him at Twitter. I think is where you said you're most accurate or most.
Twitter and Instagram. I'm very active on.
Okay.
And so at Silver Talkie at Twitter and just Keith Silverstein on Instagram. Those are the ones I'm on more often. I'm trying to be better on Facebook, but if you're going to follow me on Facebook, do Keith Silverstein voice artist. Don't try the regular, Facebook with my family, because you'll just be sitting on that wait list, and I will not approve it.
Right.
And so don't waste any of our time. Yeah. Do the other one, because you don't need to see pictures of my kids, and I do some of those on Instagram anyway. So.
That's awesome. So any parting thoughts to the fans? Anything last save rounds you want to throw out there?
No, I don't know. Just thank you so much. I'll just say in closing, like I remember reading gaming magazines when they did the ratings of games, and they get rated for sound and graphics and story, but they did not rate for voiceover. Mm-hmm. I remember seeing that start to show up, and I remember, obviously when it started becoming more and more important, and it's kind of blown me away that people pay attention to who it is. It's one thing to say the voiceover was really good in this, right? Or really bad in that. But it's another thing to be like, so-and-so was really good in this, and I liked so-and-so in this other thing, and this actress was great. And so I like it. It's interesting to me to know who's doing the voices, but it still surprises me that so many of you are paying attention. It's flattering in any way, whether it's negative or positive. It's flattering that anybody's paying attention and recognizes us by name or by voice. So let me just say thank you. I'm very appreciative, and I feel like it's a real golden age for voiceover right now, where it's not just like something we just do in a studio and then it's out there and people either love or hate the show, but it has no indication on us and nobody knows who we are. It's nice. It's really nice, and I feel very honored to be in this time where people care who's voicing their games, and people care who's voicing their anime, and care who's voicing their original series. So it's very cool. So I'm much appreciative of being able to have a virtual relationship, and because that's online, and then also meeting everybody at conventions. I'll never tire of it. It's amazing to meet people who give a shit, to be honest. It's a super cool thing, and it's great. So thank you so much for that.
Well, thank you for everything, and thank you for taking the time to talk with us. This has been a very interesting and informative conversation. It's nice to talk with you. You've been doing this for so long. You have a lot of good insight into the industry, your history with the game series, your history with the fans. So I really appreciate that.
Awesome.
What was that?
Sorry. I'm moving a chair here. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
I have to go back in because I have to get my kids to sleep, or else they're going to be running around the house.
Okay.
So I was moving a chair that I was sitting in. So yeah, I made some noise, folks. There was a little Foley happening there. That's what happens sometimes,
Yeah, it happens.
It's cool.
All right.
It's cool, baby.
Yep. All right. Well, thanks again, Keith. I won't keep you any longer. I'll let you get back to your family. Again, I appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time to talk with us, and thanks for sharing everything with the fans. And everybody who's listening, make sure you go follow Keith on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook on the voice actor or voiceover.
I don't know. You've got me confused now. Keith Silverstein, voice artist.
Voice artist. the in-between.
Look, I used that and I liked it. And now once you brand yourself, you got to stick with it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, branding.
So I don't care if you're a voice artist or a voice actor or a voice whatever, but you know how branding is, people. You branded. That's it.
That's
Stick
right.
with it. You can't change Coca-Cola's name.
That's true.
You can't do it. Don't make new Coke. No one wants new Coke.
Nobody wants new Coke. Nobody wants the old Coke they're trying to bring back for Stranger Things. I don't know what's going on with that. Anyways, thanks again, Keith. I really appreciate it. And we will talk to you again, hopefully here in the future.
Thank you guys for having me.